Panzironi this evening. For the focus, we are talking about a problem that, although fortunately it is not serious, however, it is quite widespread in the population. In fact, we are going to talk about a benign tumor that affects the adipose tissue. We are talking about the lipoma. To introduce it, we see this video.
Lipoma is a benign tumor that originates from adipose tissue. Where can this lipoma localize? It can basically present itself in any part of the body. Some localizations, such as the subcutaneous tissue of the back, rather than the extensor surfaces of the limbs, are obviously more frequent. It presents itself at any age. It tends to occur more frequently in patients who are over 50 years of age. It therefore presents clinically as a swelling, usually of soft consistency, well circumscribed, obviously being bounded by a fibrous capsule.
So Panzironi, we said that lipoma is a form of benign tumor that can form in any part of the body. How widespread is this pathology, though?
Now, unfortunately, it is very widespread because we are talking that 1 in 100 people in their lifetime will get this disease. So in Italy, about 500,000 people are calculated. And then another problem is that 20% of these people will see more lipomas appear on their body.
Actually, Panzironi, this is basically a tumor because in lipoma we have these fat cells that start to replicate uncontrollably.
It is actually not a tumor for the simple fact that they are not cancer cells, but they are to count stem cells that migrate within the adipose tissue as they are supposed to do. The problem is that they maintain this action of theirs, let's say this stem capacity, and so they continue to duplicate where they should stop duplicating.
Actually, Panzironi medicine, unfortunately, does not have many therapeutic forms to solve this problem. However, we want to let our audience know this, and in fact, we see this video.
Let's say that they tend to be treated exclusively in certain situations, such as can be, for example, major volume increases that can also give compression on adjacent structures, or still can be either unsightly or bothersome, for example, in localizations of the back on surfaces that can also be supportive and therefore can become inflamed. In all these cases, basically the approach is surgical, i.e. a lipoma excision is performed, which usually tends to localize at the subcutaneous level, but also in deeper series, such as submuscular ones, in which case the surgical approach has to be studied a little bit better.
So Panzironi here, we understood that practically the choice is mainly about how and when to remove them, because the solution is only surgical.
As I always say, we are at the usual because unfortunately when we approach a pathology in the wrong way, then we also go to find the wrong solutions. Again, in this case, in this pathology, the lipoma, actually there are alternative ways for the simple fact that in fat tissue, it is natural that it can increase in volume, and it can also increase the number of cells precisely because it is the peculiarity of this tissue that it tends to enlarge very quickly, and the fat cells tend to fill with fat. For this reason, by going to restore what are the phenomena that induce the metabolic alteration and therefore cause the lipoma, one can very easily see a regression without the need to do the surgery.
Panzironi, obviously you are saying something very serious and also very big. It's been a while since I told you this, but tonight you are saying something very so. Then just to make us understand why you are always trying to understand, to find the solutions, to explain to us here, this is important, to explain to us why you are saying what you are saying. She created, just with our editorial staff, a tutorial explaining lipomas. Let's go and see it.
Lipomas are caused by an accumulation of adipocyte cells with CD34 expression present in hematopoietic and mesenchymal MSC stem cells. Potential roles of the CD34 family include increasing proliferation and blocking differentiation of stem cells, which then maintain the stem progenitor phenotype. This process occurs when adipose tissue is subjected to inflammation and needs reparative processes. This process is induced by an increased presence of white adipocytes, called VATs, excessive glycolysis activity, and altered leptin upregulation, the presence of immune cells, and an excess of VEGF that promotes angiogenesis. This alteration of adipose tissue is caused by the overproduction of insulin, which promotes glycolysis in adipose cells, stimulates mTOR production, causes leptinoresistance, and induces adipocyte cell death, thus attracting mast cells that will induce the inflammatory phenomenon. In addition, cortisol via the specific beta-I receptor present in adipocytes increases the size of lipomas.
So Panzironi, let's start by saying one thing that the video made us realize, that unlike other tissues, fat is rich in stem cells.
Yes, it's really the peculiarity of fat. We all know that we are able to gain several pounds in a week or a month, and this is really due to the ability of our body to be able to store up energy reserves very efficiently, but also very quickly. And this happens simply with the migration of new stem cells that then turn into adipocytes. And let's say with the actual fattening of these cells, they start to produce triglycerides within the cells themselves.
Here we go back to the stem cells that the video told us about. Basically, these stem cells become hyperactive due to various factors. And as you said, then there are immune cells, and then there is an inflammatory process.
Yes, it's all based on that, because the simple fact is that the moment we have an overstimulation by insulin, what happens is that these cells, first of all, start to fill with fat. Then in that inflamed tissue, we find obviously a presence of stem cells that should turn into mature adipocytes, then lose their stemness. Actually, the inflammation induces them further to progress in their ability to duplicate. To this, then, we add to this inflammatory state also the possibility of trauma. And then at that point, we have a damaged microcirculation that activates other angiogenic growth factors such as VEGF, which in fact is a factor that allows the growth of vessels, but induces at the same time more stemness of these adipocyte cells.
Look, Panzironi, you mentioned trauma. So basically that trauma can trigger the appearance of lipoma, obviously on tissues that are already predisposed. So what are the causes that cause this predisposition?
Obviously, as usual, it's the diet, that is the Mediterranean diet that is so much recommended to us, actually is responsible once again for this pathology, for the simple fact that we know that these foods are very rich in sugar, up to 80%, and we know that when we eat these foods, we activate insulin on the one hand, but also cortisol, two hormones that are fundamental precisely for the occurrence of this pathology. Talking about insulin, let's say, allows the transformation of brown adipocyte cells into white adipocytes, then vats them, and then forces them to assimilate this fat so violently that it induces mitochondrial dysfunction, therefore the death of these same cells. At this point, the immune system comes into play, the mast cells that have to, yes, eliminate these dead cells, but it creates a silent inflammation, which is the basis, obviously, of the lipoma. And then the cortisol prevents these adipocyte cells from releasing the fatty acids and basically continues to make them fat. So we have the increase in the size of the lipoma.
Well, it seems to me that the theory is unimpeachable in the way he explained it. He obviously made it clear everything that he has studied and that he has gone into. Then, right at this point in our focus, we bring in a person who comes to tell us about the pathway of recovery from this very pathology. Then I asked the studio to bring in Ms. Adriana Staffi from Rome. Good evening, Mrs. Staffi. Welcome. I invite you, of course, to sit down and immediately start asking you some questions. So first of all, let's do a chronology, because you, starting from the month of December 2017, began to see swellings appearing on both legs. What was she seeing?
Bumps. Bumps?
How many were there more or less initially?
At first few, 1, 2.
Then month after month, she sees the number of lipomas and their size increase. How many lipomas had she gotten to? But more importantly, their size, what was it?
I got to 30. Size from 18 to 30 millimeters.
So from 1 inch and 8 inches to 3 inches and about 30 lipomas all over the legs. At that point, of course, you get worried, and so you decide to go to his family doctor. And what does the doctor tell you?
I went and had my legs looked at, and he said they are fibrolipomas.
So it pretty much confirmed what you already thought. So then just the doctor gives you a referral. Following this referral, you have an ultrasound of your legs with a specialist. And after the referral, what do they tell you?
They give me confirmation one more time that they are fibrolipomas and that I have to keep them.
And you had to keep them. In fact, with these tests in hand, you go back to your primary care physician. And what exactly does the primary care physician tell you?
General practitioner told me the same thing as the doctor, that I had to live with them.
He had to lay down.
But it's when they took a certain size that I really couldn't take it anymore.
Had to remove one by one. Look, obviously you said that these lipomas were giving you, as well as being unsightly, they were there present. However, they were also giving you pains. I mean, they were...
Of course, they were also giving me pains because they were very close. So between the inflammation, the swelling, the pain, a horrible thing.
Look, when you were diagnosed with exactly this kind of pathology, how did you feel? I mean, how did it affect your life?
Affected a lot, because in addition to this last pathology that really upset me, 100% of my life, there were other pathologies. Adding this as well, I couldn't do it.
It was added to, let's say, a state of, let's say, general sickness. But then in April 2018, you know, the Life 120 lifestyle, you want to say, how did it happen?
It happened that in one evening I was watching a TV, flipping channels, and then I lingered on this channel where Adriano Panzironi was. I heard the speech, everything. It really hit me, I mean, in my state of mind of everything. So the next day I started doing Life 120 again.
That is directly from the next day?
Yes.
Mrs. Staffy, however, normally those who start Life 120, sometimes some do not do it fully or rigidly. How did you start?
I started it in a rigid way, 100% in fact, taking out the fruits and vegetables as well.
That much. Okay, how soon after that did you see the first improvements on the lipomas? After 3 months. After even 3 months, then I'm going to ask you, after 6 months, how were your lipomas? Almost gone, even almost gone. So doing a calculation from April, after 6 months, they were already almost gone. I know then in December 2018, you go back to his doctor to request to do another ultrasound. Because what if they were gone?
I saw that the skin was back to normal by then. However, I still had this thing of dealing with the doctor about this. I knew inside that it was over, that I was fine. However, I wanted to make them understand.
And so I would like you to tell us what happened when you had this visit for lipomas that were now gone.
So when I went for it, I also took the previous chart with me. I had the exam and everything done first, and then I brought the chart from before. As they say, I put it all the two in the front. And I said, you tell me what is written here, what is written here. He read and he said, what is written here doesn't result.
Effectively, that is. Let's make our viewers understand. Basically, you, at the outcome of the second visit in December 2018, there were no more lipomas. So at that point, you pull out the previous analysis done about a year before, and there was instead the outcome that there were these lipomas. And the doctor who sees the two, what does he say?
Said the one from before is not true.
Ah, that wasn't true from before. Ah, all right. So he wasn't puzzled, he just said lipomas were wrong.
No, very convinced. He said, look, you didn't have this pathology here. So I said, then this, what is written here, signed, they are not true. To him, they were not true. He wouldn't confirm even having the fact in his hand.
Sure, and with that, I would say, it turns out really unbelievable, Mr. Panzironi.
There are ultrasound examinations. I mean, in the face of something like that, it would have been more interesting to maybe ask what the lady had done so that they were no longer there, no?
So, I thank Ms. Adriana Staffi for being here with us.